President Obama had an historic meeting with Pope Francis at the Vatican this week. What are the likely effects of the meeting? The Archbishop of Washington, D.C., Cardinal Donald Wuerl, is here to give us his thoughts. And oral arguments were heard at the Supreme Court about the constitutionality of the contraceptive mandate in the healthcare law. Former lead counsel for the Hobby Lobby case, Kyle Duncan, will decode the arguments. And later we'll explore the controversial new biblical epic, Noah, which is hitting theaters this week. Director Darren Aronofsky and a few of its stars speak out, as will Rick Warren in an exclusive. And finally, the Benedictine Sisters of Mary have done it again. Another #1 record on the Billboard Classical chart with Lent at Ephesus. Their producer, Monica FITZGIBBONS of Montfort Music, explains their success. The World Over Live begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Cardinal Donald Wuerl, Kyle Duncan, Monica FITZGIBBONS, Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, Anthony Hopkins. I can't name all the people coming up, so just stay tuned. If you'd like to comment on tonight's program, send us a tweet at Raymond Arroyo, or you can chime in on tonight's show at worldover@EWTN.com. We've got a lot on tap, but first, here's the brief news from the world over this week. The long-anticipated first meeting between the Pope and the President took place on Thursday at the Papal Palace in Rome. According to the Vatican, during their private 52-minute conversation, Pope Francis and U.S. President Barack Obama discussed international affairs, with the Pope stressing respect for international law and the desire for negotiated solutions to conflicts. The Vatican also noted that the Holy Father strongly emphasized concerns for the exercise of the rights to religious freedom, life, and conscientious objection, an apparent allusion to the contraception mandate of the Obamacare law. As for the pleasantries, the Pope said at the top of the meeting that he hoped the President felt at home. President Obama told the Pope he was a great admirer. Among the gifts, the Pope received seeds from the White House garden. Obama got a copy of the Pope's apostolic exhortation, Joy of the Gospel. More on the Pope and the President and what President Obama said about this meeting in our next segment. After appearing on this program last week, the Vatican's Chief Justice, Raymond Cardinal Burke, is again making headlines this week with a critique of President Obama. LifeSite News published the English translation of a recent interview the Cardinal granted to a Polish magazine. When asked about the U.S. President's policies toward Christians, Cardinal Burke said, President Obama's policies have become progressively more hostile toward Christian civilization. He appears to be a totally secularized man who aggressively promotes anti-life and anti-family policies. Now he wants to restrict the exercise of the freedom of religion. Such policies would have been unimaginable in the United States even 40 years ago, end quote. Another Christian town has fallen to Islamist rebels in northern Syria. Fighters from an array of armed opposition groups seized the predominantly Armenian Christian town near the Turkish border on Sunday. Armenian churches were reportedly desecrated and many faithful had to flee. A church leader told Fides News that the Christians fled at dawn, some in pajamas, when they heard gunshots. The rebels came from the mountains. They were many and well armed, this witness said. And in Kenya, 6 people were killed after suspected jihadists stormed and opened fire in a crowded church on Sunday. At least 17 were wounded and the 2 assailants escaped. No claim of responsibility yet, but Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab is suspected. The group has terrorized Kenyans with dozens of attacks over the last several years, many of them on churches. And the assisted suicide debate is heating up in the British Parliament. Prime Minister David Cameron this week came out against a bill to legalize physician-assisted suicide. Cameron made the comment after the Minister of Care and Support, Norman Lamb, spoke in favor of the legislation. By some accounts, it is gaining momentum in the House of Lords. Cameron expressed concern that those who are terminally ill would feel unfairly pressured to end their lives. A date for the second reading and likely debate in the House of Lords has not yet been announced. The bill will be considered under a free vote. That is, MPs will not be required to vote with their respective parties. We'll keep you posted. And finally, another U.S. diocese has rejected Common Core education standards. Bishop David Zubik of Pittsburgh has assured parents that the diocese will not adopt the national standards in spite of the strong push by the National Catholic Education Association. In his message to parents, Bishop Zubik noted that the NCEA is not a governing body for Catholic schools. Our Catholic faith guides the selection of all curricula, goals, textbooks, and other resources, he said. Some parents and educators have expressed concerns that the federal government standards could conflict with Catholic identity of parochial schools. The dioceses of La Crosse, Madison, and Gaylord have recently rejected the Common Core standards. When we return, the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., Cardinal Donald Wuerl, joins us with his thoughts on the first meeting between the U.S. President Barack Obama and Pope Francis. What happens now? And what about that controversial Noah movie? The director and the stars sound off when The World Over Live continues. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. On Thursday, President Barack Obama arrived in Rome for his first ever meeting with Pope Francis. According to the White House, they discussed common ground issues like poverty relief and income inequality. But the Vatican statement following the visit tells a different tale. For what really happened and its impact, we're joined by the Archbishop of Washington, Donald Cardinal Wuerl. Your Eminence, thank you for being here.
It's great to be back with you.
Great to have you. Now, I want to share with you and the audience, this is a piece of the Vatican statement describing this meeting. It says, in the context of bilateral relations and cooperation between church and state, there was a discussion on questions of particular relevance for the church in that country, the United States, such as the exercise of the rights to religious freedom, life, and conscientious objection, as well as the issue of immigration reform. Your Eminence, is this pretty much what you expected would be discussed during this conversation?
It's certainly what I hoped would be on the agenda, and I couldn't imagine that the Pope would receive the President of the United States and not touch on some of these issues. They're issues that have dominated the news, and they are pressing issues right now. This isn't a question of something from years ago or some possibility in the future. We're talking about what's going on right now. And so the Holy See issues the statement. What did they talk about? The Pope raised the question, religious freedom. The protection of life. These are basic issues of today. I wasn't surprised at all.
And the immigration reform, we saw that little girl who, at his Wednesday audience, jumped the barrier and said, my father's going to be deported. She's in America. And the Pope promised he would raise that issue with the President, which apparently he did.
And I think we could count on that coming up because, again, it's one of those burning issues. All of these matters we're talking about, they're right out in front of us today. The question of deporting members of families, I mean, there has to be some way in which that whole issue is addressed in an equitable and fair and just manner. But the question of religious liberty, the question of freedom of conscience, conscientious objection, these are fundamental American issues. It seems in a way almost ironic that it would be the Pope raising these issues.
Right. I want to share this with you. This is the President's version of the events at a press conference in Rome. Here's what he said about the Pope. Listen.
He actually did not touch in detail on the Affordable Care Act in my meeting with the Secretary of State, Cardinal Pentolin. We discussed briefly the issue of making sure that that conscience and religious freedom was observed in the context of applying the law. And I explained to him that most religious organizations are entirely exempt. Religiously affiliated hospitals or universities or NGOs simply have to attest that they have a religious objection, in which case they are not required to provide contraception, although the employees of theirs who choose are able to obtain it through the insurance company. And I pledge to continue to dialogue with the U.S. Conference of Bishops to make sure that we can strike the right balance, making sure that not only everybody has health care, but families and women in particular are able to enjoy the kind of health care coverage that the ACA offers, but that religious freedom is still observed.
Your Eminence, do you believe that it's possible, given all that we've seen from the administration so far, to reach some sort of balance or compromise between the distribution of contraceptives to employees and the exercise of religious freedom?
Well, I think where we are right now is in court, because we were not able to find some workable agreement. I know the leadership of the Conference of Bishops made every effort, meeting with the President, meeting with the people from the administration, and we're in court because what came out of all of that didn't meet the needs of Catholic institutions. It certainly didn't meet the needs of our Catholic ministry and service. You know, one of the really harmful elements in all of this is the administration's claim to be able to separate ministries from church. And that's what this whole accommodation is all about, to divide. Right. That's a whole new element in church-state relations in the United States, and that's one of the reasons why we're in court.
Does it concern you that that was that it was depicted that way by the administration to the Secretary of State at the Vatican, that, you know, well, we've already granted these waivers, we've already granted these accommodations, as if it's a done deal, and somehow you and the conference are just not being cooperative?
Well, it's been said, that's the position that the administration has taken all along, that we don't have a problem, that we, the church, bishops, shouldn't have a problem because it's all been solved, and yet it hasn't been. Again, I want to return to why would we be in court, and why would the court be hearing this if the problem had been solved?
Right, at the Supreme Court level, no less. What does this really accomplish? The Pope meeting with the President. Do you believe we'll see any change in the administration's policies? That I can't really envision, but what I think might happen is this Holy Father is such a force for good. I can't help but think that there has been some impact. It was a brief meeting. In a way, you can't expect too much from it, but this Holy Father impacts people in a way that they're not always prepared to expect is going to happen. Well, I loved the opening. His opening, which you could pick up a little bit from the cameras. He sat down and through the interpreter, he said to the President, "I want you to feel very much at home here." And I thought, what an opening this is. That, you know, talk about disorienting for anybody sitting across from this man. So his pastoral touch was even being applied, I thought, this morning.
He can be totally disarming because of his sincerity. What comes across is this wonderfully pastoral, very, very alert person. And what will come out of the meeting, I don't think there'll be anything of great immediacy, but I wonder if down the road the impact isn't going to begin to unfold.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you, there has been a great back and forth, a public debate, if you will, over what to do with divorced and remarried Catholics and whether they should be admitted to the sacraments. Cardinal Casper has made it known at the preparatory meeting for the synod, in which you will be on the council of, coming up this October, where he said there must be some accommodation. In mercy, we have to provide some answer to these divorced and remarried Catholics. You had Cardinal Burke and others, Cardinal O'Malley, saying Christ's teachings will not permit us to change the basic teaching. What are your thoughts?
Well, listening to that whole debate, what I heard was the starting point is the indissolubility of marriage. And I think we all heard that reaffirmed and reaffirmed and reaffirmed, the indissolubility of marriage. That being the case, how do we pastorally respond to people whose marriage has collapsed, has failed? And that's where I heard the discussion, not to change the teaching, but when you're dealing now with annulments, is there a way to address those so they move along more quickly? Is there a way to help people, particularly in a culture where the whole idea of the permanency of marriage is not understood? Mm-hmm. Is there a way to begin to address that? Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're going to see anything radical come out of all of this discussion. Mm-hmm. Our Holy Father certainly is saying, let us be caring and loving and embracing, but at the same time, we can't change the teaching.
Very good. Cardinal Donald Wuerl, thank you so much for being here. When we return, the U.S. Supreme Court is considering the Hobby Lobby case, which deals with this HHS contraceptive mandate in the healthcare bill. Attorney Kyle Duncan will join us on set, and later, the epic movie Noah. Is it biblical enough? Rick Warren and the movie's creators and stars sound off when The World Over Live continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. On Tuesday, the 9 Supreme Court justices spent 90 minutes grilling attorneys in the Sebelius versus Hobby Lobby case. At issue, whether for-profit corporations can cite religious objections to opt out of the mandate to provide employees with contraception and abortifacient coverage. Joining us to analyze the arguments is the original lead counsel for Hobby Lobby, now in private practice, Kyle Duncan. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Raymond. Nice to be here.
I want to get your opinion on this. We heard leading into this case, and in a lot of the public coverage now, this really boils down to the government extending a right or recognizing a right for corporations. In the Citizens United case, they said corporations have a right to free speech. Here, they're asking whether corporations have religious liberties or religious freedom. You would say what to that argument?
Right. That's really a distraction from the real argument here, which is, can people get together in a business or a nonprofit or a church and exercise religion? Well, we've always thought that they could. Now, a lot of oxygen in this case has been sort of taken up by saying, well, can corporations pray? Can corporations go to heaven?
Does a corporation have a soul? I kept hearing
does a corporation have a soul? You know, it's interesting. When we finally got to the Supreme Court level, those arguments got no traction at all. And I didn't see a single justice who was nodding their heads when the government was saying no for-profit corporation can exercise religion. Instead, I heard a justice like Justice Breyer say, well, you know, what about 5 Jewish brothers who are running a kosher deli or a kosher slaughterhouse, that sort of thing? And what does it matter what their business form is as far as whether they're exercising religion? The two things just don't have anything to do with each other. So the government didn't get much traction with that argument at all. And by the end of the argument, I saw the government backpedaling away from that argument.
Now, tell me how the Religious Freedom Act of 1993, which I remember sadly very distinctly when it was signed, how will that affect this particular Hobby Lobby case?
Well, that statute, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, which was signed by Bill Clinton, the claims in this case will really turn on that law. As a matter of fact, one of the first questions that Justice Kennedy asked that I thought was very significant is he asked Paul Clement, arguing for Hobby Lobby, can we decide this case based on a statute as opposed to deciding it on the First Amendment? And the answer, of course, is although the parties have made claims under the Constitution, that statute is extremely important. And that indicated to me, at least reading the tea leaves a little bit, that when the court can decide a case on a narrower ground like that, on a statute, it sort of feels like it's on more solid ground than going out to the Constitution.
And what does it say, very briefly? What does that Religious Freedom Act say?
Right. It says if the government substantially burdens someone's exercise of religion, a person's exercise of religion, then the government has to justify that burden under the highest standard known to law, otherwise known as strict scrutiny. Right. What that means, in normal person speak, is that the government has to have an extremely good reason for doing what it's doing, and it can't accomplish its objectives through any other means at all.
Now, the government is saying, the administration is saying, we are not substantially burdening anybody's religious rights. They aren't being substantially burdened. It's so remote, having to pay for this type of coverage, for reproductive coverage, as they call it, contraceptives and abortifacients, that there's no argument here. You would say what?
Right. It's hard to understand the government's argument on this, because what substantial burden has traditionally meant in the law is how much pressure is the government putting on you to do something that your religion says you can't do.
Right.
What the religious exercise here is quite clear. I can't pay for someone else's abortions. Very, very clear. The fines and other penalties that the government is threatening to put on business owners like the Green family are enormous. So there's really no question that there's a substantial burden here, and the government's arguments are just very difficult to understand.
carve-outs that are already in the bill, okay, for certain religious communities, does that undermine the administration's argument here about this substantial burden?
Well, we certainly say it does. And an interesting thing that happened during oral argument is there was a lot of discussion about the so-called grandfathered plans. Now, grandfathered plans, grandfathering was given for pure administrative, maybe even political reasons. You can keep your plan if you like it. Grandfathered plans, which number in the tens of thousands, covering millions of people, don't have to comply with the mandate, don't have to provide any women's preventive services, mammograms, none of that. However, they do have to provide certain sort of politically palatable items, such as letting your children stay on the plan until 26, no lifetime coverage limits. These were popular. These poll well. So Congress said grandfathered plans have to cover those, but not any preventive services mandate. What that says to us is that what the government is trying to accomplish through the contraceptive mandate just really isn't that important.
I want to share with you and the audience some of the arguments that were offered and the questions particularly that the justices had for both sides of this case. First, Justice Kennedy. He raised this point. He said, and this is the quote to Donald Verrilli, the Solicitor General, "Under your view, a profit corporation could be forced in principle. There are some statutes on the books now which would prevent it, but could be forced in principle to pay for abortions." What did this tell you?
Well, I thought this was a devastatingly bad moment for the government's argument. You know, for a lot of the argument, justices who appeared to be against Hobby Lobby were trotting out the so-called slippery slope arguments.
Right.
If we rule for you, then someone will say, I won't cover blood transfusions or I won't cover vaccinations. But then the real slippery slope argument is, what if the court rules for the government? Could it force a group of doctors, say, who are in a for-profit medical practice, let's say they're Catholic doctors.
Right.
Could the government force them to provide surgical abortions? And the government seemed to agree that, yes, the government could do that.
Well, first Verrilli said, no, that's not what we're talking about here. The law doesn't ask for that. But then Kennedy kept pressing him, and Roberts jumped in.
Well, Kennedy kept pressing him, Justice Kennedy kept pressing, then Chief Justice Roberts jumped in and said, but isn't that what we are in fact talking about here, according to the beliefs of the families here? Aren't we talking about chemical abortions? And the government's answer to that was, well, we agree that they sincerely believe that.
You mentioned a moment ago some of the other justices. This is Justice Kagan who said, referring to her colleague, Justice Sotomayor, she said this to the individual, Paul Clement, who was arguing on behalf of Hobby Lobby. Justice Sotomayor is quite right that there are quite a number of medical treatments that different religious groups object to. So one religious group could opt out of this, and another religious group could opt out of that, and everything would be piecemeal and nothing would be uniform. What do you say to that?
Well, with all due respect to the justices, this is what we call the bureaucrats' objection to religious exemptions, which is if I give you an exemption, someone else is going to ask for an exemption, so no exemptions for anybody. That's not how we ought to think of the law. It's not how the court has analyzed the law in the past. What the court has said is hypothetical objections, we can deal with those in the future. There may be fringe religious objections that will never succeed in court, but let's deal with the objection we have here that so many people around the country have filed suit over.
But
this one.
They've already given opt-outs to the Amish and other groups as part of the original law. So I didn't know what Elena Kagan was talking about at that moment, because there's already a kind of jack-o'-lantern approach
That's
here.
right. The fact that the government has offered exemptions to so many different groups already on precisely the same grounds as Hobby Lobby and the Green family are arguing about really undermines the idea that, well, if they give this exemption now, the floodgates will open.
The floodgates are already opened.
The exemptions have already been given. I don't know that it's a floodgate at all. It's just the exemptions have been given, so why not give it to these folks?
I want to end with this. This is Justice Kennedy, and he said, in a way, the employees are in a position, and he's the swing vote here, all important. In a way, the employees are in a position where the government, through its health care plan, is, under your view, is allowing the employer to put the employee in a disadvantageous position. The employee may not agree with these religious beliefs of the employer. Does the religious beliefs of the employer just trump?
And of course the answer is no, of course it doesn't trump, but the government has to show a really good reason to force an employer to provide a specific subsidized benefit to the employee. You know, the government really did double down on this employee rights idea, but when pressed by the court, including by some members of the so-called left on the court, the government could not answer this basic question, which is, if this is so important to employees, can you get it to them? Can you get the drugs to them through some alternative method? The government had no good answer to that.
I want to shift gears here at the D.C. Circuit level. There was a major case happening at the same time the Supreme Court was hearing the Hobby Lobby case, and this is the Halbig versus Sebelius. Now, this case I thought was very interesting, and I've sort of been watching this from afar. What this focuses on are 34 states that opted out of the health care plan. They refused to establish what is known as a state exchange, where they would dole out health care in the state. Because they opted out, the government set up a federal exchange there, but according to the law, subsidies to go to poor families and those who need help can only move through state exchanges, not federal ones. They're arguing that the statute itself, the law, just invalidates what the Obama administration has done here. Your thoughts on this and what the implications could be?
This is a very important case because it's not just a technical question about money flowing. The way that the federal government incentivized the states to set up these exchanges, which are a very important part of the overall Health Care Act, is to say, we'll offer subsidies to your citizens if they come on the state exchange, betting that the states would take that incentive and set up the exchanges. Most have not. And so the government now finds itself running its own exchanges, and the law, at least the way it's written, seems very clear to the challengers, which says subsidies won't flow. So this is a major problem, and as I understand it from the accounts of the argument, the government faced some extremely tough sledding in the D.C. Circuit.
Do you think it'll be ruled out of order?
It could be, and in which case it might go to the en banc D.C. Circuit, which has undergone some personnel changes recently, so who knows how that'll come out. Ultimately, the case may have to go to the Supreme Court, and that will be another, blockbuster challenge to the Affordable Care Act.
Oh, Kyle Duncan, thank you so much.
Thanks
we
for
will
having
be
me.
in touch with you as this case matures. Now to our next segment. It is one of the most talked about and controversial films based on a Bible story in years. In the wake of Son of God and God's Not Dead, two big movies we recently saw, Noah splashes into cineplexes all over the world this weekend. The epic adventure is being praised by some and criticized by others, especially by some in the religious community, one of whom we spoke with exclusively, as you'll see. We also talked with the film's director, Darren Aronofsky, and the stars, including Russell Crowe, Emma Watson, Jennifer Connelly, Anthony Hopkins, and Ray Winstone. They are all talking about Noah. Take a look.
No. What did he say? He's going to destroy the world.
My father said that one day, if man continued in his ways, the Creator would annihilate this world.
Can it not be averted?
He speaks to you. You must trust that he speaks in a way that you can understand.
A great flood is coming. We build a vessel to survive the storm. We build an ark.
Remember, Noah, he chose you for a reason.
That's the end of everything.
Beginning. Beginning of everything.
Emma Watson plays Ela, a girl Noah and his family adopts, who later joins them on the Ark. When we met the actress, best known for her work on the Harry Potter films, she was effusive, fun, and compliments work every time.
You are so wonderful. Thank you so much. Can I ask a huge favor? I'm allowed to take a headshot of you.
If you
as
let
well
me
to
get
go
in it
it.
with you and you send it to me.
Okay. Well, you have to ask.
I know, they're telling me no pictures, but okay, go ahead.
I know, but I'm breaking the rules. but I
Okay.
don't know what to do.
Why does she get to take pictures and I can't take pictures? I want to start with, you are really a major catalyst in this story, and it's a subplot people may not be expecting. I don't want to ruin it. I can't talk about all of it. But there is a line that Russell Crowe says to you at one point that I think kind of captures a very life-affirming theme I want you to comment on. He says, I thought you'd be a burden, because they find you, they rescue you, they pick you up, you become a member of this family. I thought you'd be a burden, but you are a precious gift, he says. Tell me about that moment and how that illuminates, if you will, this entire story.
Essentially, you're, up until the age of 18, you're incredibly indebted to your parents who are supporting you. They're really taking care of all of your needs, and I feel like a lot of children feel a lot of pressure to make them proud, to kind of be everything that they hope you will be. And so for Ela, that's this incredible pressure, and she doesn't feel worthy. She doesn't feel complete. She doesn't feel like she can fulfill the task.
What surprised you most, shocked you most when you saw it the first time?
It's just you are so emotionally overwrought by the end of the film. It's difficult to even process in one sitting. I'll be really interested to see whether people go back and watch it multiple times, because it's just so much to take in.
Yeah. In Noah, Sir Anthony Hopkins plays Methuselah, Noah's mystical grandfather. Sir Anthony, tell me, how did you prepare for this? You're playing a 900-year-old man. It's hardly typecasting.
Well, I didn't need makeup.
Come on.
I didn't know, learn the lines, show up and listen to the director and act with your fellow actor, that's all.
What would you say to those who might be startled by this take? They have expectations of kind of, the sandals and the long robes, and this has
Charlton Heston type.
Right, Charlton Heston sort of, we know this story.
Yeah.
And it's very different. The conception here is very different.
Well, it breaks all the boundaries. What have they say about the envelope? What do they call it?
It breaks open the envelope, rips open the envelope.
Yeah, and it's a broader sweep than the conventional biblical story.
Jennifer Connelly plays Noah's wife, a character one hears very little from in the Bible, not so here. And you really create the emotional center of this piece. I mean, there's that moment where you and Noah have that great confrontation. I don't want to ruin it but it is such a moving moment for the audience. But finding that in the midst of all this, in this huge epic, that had to be a bit of a struggle, because there's so much going on in this movie.
Well, that's what Name is. That's what my character is. That's what she's coming from, is love. She's love. She's fighting for love. She's fighting for goodness, the goodness that she believes must exist in humanity. She's fighting for humanity. And so that's my job as an actor. I'm fighting for that corner. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there are effects, and there's water, and there are all these things, and there are all these spectacular things to look at. But as an actor, my corner that I have to protect is the emotional content. So,
You were inspired by Proverbs 31, I was intrigued to learn.
I was.
During your research. Tell me about that.
Well, I felt, obviously, a great responsibility playing a character that's in the Bible. And yet it's an interesting endeavor because you don't learn anything about Noah's wife when you read Genesis.
Right.
But Darren and Ari Handel had written her as, I think, a quite virtuous woman. So I was interested to investigate how the Bible would describe a virtuous woman. What did the Bible have to say about what that meant to be a virtuous woman? And I found Proverbs 31 to be very interesting in its account. And what I found very interesting was the strength that it detailed. How industrious a virtuous woman would have been, what kinds of jobs she might have been doing. So I talked to Darren about that, and we tried to integrate some of those things. So in little ways, in little details, you feel that she has her own life. She has her own, things that she's not just only existing within the scenes, but that she's coming to it doing other things because she would have been doing so many things.
Director Darren Aronofsky won a writing competition with an essay he wrote about Noah in middle school. Since that time, he has long wanted to turn the classic tale into a film. I hope to discuss his recent meeting with Pope Francis, but Aronofsky had other ideas.
EWTN?
EWTN.
What does it stand for?
Eternal Word Television Network. You're eating my time, Aronofsky.
Oh,
What
sorry.
are you doing?
Give me those. I apologize.
I want the clock reset.
Sorry.
I'm playing. Let's start with this meeting with Pope Francis that just took place, which was unexpected. We heard all the press, you're not going to get the meeting. You ended up getting the meeting. Tell me about it, what it meant to you.
It was amazing to be there in St. Peter's Square, and it turned out it was Father's Day in Italy, which was great. And I had been inspired for a long time by his, talking about the stewardship and our responsibility to creation. That's what he talked about in his first sermon, and a lot of those ideas connect to the animals and to Noah's Ark in a lot of way. And so I was excited to sort of stop by and see, and then to be there on Father's Day, and he was talking about how all fathers need to be fathers for all children. And then he started talking about how to be a father and that it's important to have love and show love to your children, but also, if they do something wrong, to encourage them and to, have the right guiding hand. And those themes and ideas are really a big part of Noah. We've always talked about, what does righteous mean? Because Noah is described as righteous in his times. And most people think that means he was good, but the word righteous, to theologians really is this idea of a combination of justice and mercy. And as a parent, how we would always think about it is, if you're too just with a child, too strict, you can destroy them. And if you're too merciful, you can spoil a child. So finding that balance of justice and mercy is how to be a good parent. And so to see the Pope talking about those ideas as I'm thinking about them was really a great experience.
Yeah, and this is really Noah's struggle at the heart of your vision here for this Noah story. It is that balance between mercy and justice. And he really does wrestle with it. That great line that he says to Emma Watson's character, I thought you were a burden, but you're a gift. You're a gift to us.
Exactly.
And that really is a central theme to this
Absolutely.
film.
Well, you think about it, it's the fourth story in the Bible, right? It starts with the beauty of creation. Then it's the original sin, Adam and Eve. And then it's the first murder, right? Cain kills Abel. And then there's an incredible time jump. It goes 10 generations, and the next story is God was so grieved in his heart that he wants to wipe out creation. So thinking about that, to go from creation to wanting to wipe it out and start over again. What that must have, in our humility felt like, was something we wanted to try and personify and connect to Noah.
Now, you trained in field biology.
Yes.
You majored in social anthropology at Harvard. As I was watching this film, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. How did this shape your visual understanding of the sweep of creation? And Noah, he seems to be very obsessed with his herbs and healing creatures.
Well, I mean, the first kind of command in the Bible, is God to Adam says, in Genesis 2:15, he talks about, here's the garden, and it's yours to tend and to keep. And to us, that was, a really interesting theme because somehow we fell off that track, and the line of Cain, corrupted the earth. That's what it says in the Bible. And so we decided that the line of Seth, which Noah is a descendant of, maybe should be more connected to what was commanded in the garden, trying to connect, trying to get back to the garden, and trying to take care of it and to tend and to keep it. So for us, it was really important to connect that ecological message to Noah, who was there to save the animals. Right. And that's what he was doing. He was saving the animals. And to us, that was a really rich idea.
Ray Winstone stars as the villain of the piece, Tubal-Cain, the last of the kings and a fierce warrior.
When I heard talk of miracles, I dismissed them. But then I saw the birds with my own eyes, and I had to come.
There isn't anything for you here.
No. This all belongs to me. This land, this forest, that stronghold of yours. I have men at my back, and you stand alone and defy me? I'm not alone.
In a climactic moment, he battles Noah's defenders, a group of creatures known as the Watchers, stone giants with a secret identity.
When I saw the artwork for them, but when I actually watched the film, I went, whoa, oh, I'm in a different movie now. Because it's kind of like that modern thing coming in, this kind of transformer thing coming in. And then and it kind of worries you at first. It kind of put me on a back foot. And then you buy into it.
Yeah, no, it's this Middle-earth quality.
And it's kind of a brave thing to do, I've got to tell you, because it freaked me at first, it really did. But then I kind of sat back and I bought into the whole thing, especially when you see the beautiful thing that happens from this, you know, during the course of the film.
Right.
And it's a really brave way to go, I think, from Darren.
I want to talk for a moment about the Watchers.
Sure.
These are dramatic, almost, it feels as if you're in a magical realm, almost Middle-earthian.
Right.
Because it is before our understanding. Their concept of God is very crude. Tell me about that decision. It is a bold notion.
You look in the Bible, and this the description of the pre-Diluvian world is very, very different than what we understand the world to be. First of all, of course, it was a time when miracles were everywhere. You know, they were, everything in the Noah story is miraculous, from the deluge to the Nephilim on the planet to the Leviathan to people living for hundreds of years. Everything in it points to a very, very different time and a different kind of conception. So we wanted to capture that because once the flood happens, we're in our world. But before that, I think it is a time of, where there were no real commandments from God. There were no laws. The Noahic laws happened after the flood. The Ten Commandments happened much later. So we needed to kind of create a world that made sense with all the rules that were there. We didn't want to impose stuff that happens in the Bible later onto that story.
Still, some religious leaders, even those who have yet to see the film, believe there are impositions onto the story. Too many liberties are taken with the biblical account, they claim, including a controversial subplot involving Noah that appears nowhere in Scripture. Other leaders, like Saddleback Church founding pastor Rick Warren, whom we spoke with exclusively, took offense at Aronofsky's recent comments about the film.
What I know is what the director said. He said, this is the most unbiblical biblical film ever made. Then I say, why choose a Bible story? If you're going to choose a Bible story, why not stick with the Bible story? There's plenty of good fiction stories you can use. Why choose a Bible story? I don't have the permission to take artistic license with what God says.
What I meant is we really wanted to reinterpret the biblical story, the biblical film. That it's been 50 years since Cecil B. DeMille made the Ten Commandments, and then after that, John Huston made that Bible film, which didn't work too well. But no one's really done the Old Testament in a serious way in 50 years, and that was a big undertaking because we needed to reinvent the genre for a 21st century audience.
In what way is Darren's interpretation of this story different from the one found in Scripture?
Well, that's an interpretive thing, You're making a rash assumption there that I would think that there's something different, which I'm not necessarily sure that it is so vastly different at all. I mean, it's just an interpretation. There's very few lines in the Bible, very few specific lines, that tell the story. So if you're going to make that tale into a narrative for a feature film, you got to fill in some of those gaps.
Our family has been chosen for a great task. To save the innocent.
The innocent?
The animals.
Why are they innocent? Because they still live as they did in the garden.
Yes. We need to save enough of them to start again.
But what of us?
I guess we get to start again too, in a new and better world. But first, we have to build.
A great flood is coming. The waters of the heavens will meet the waters of the earth. We build a vessel to survive the storm. We build an ark.
At its core, it really is a family drama. You know, there's this task to be fulfilled, and a very determined person, somebody who's, you know, going to get the job done.
Did the religious interpretation of Noah shape your portrayal?
You know, I mean, you know, some religions say Noah is a prophet. Some people talk of him in terms of, you know, having sort of superhero status, but he was, in my mind, just a man, given a particularly heavy task and quite a burden to carry. So I think once you reduce it to human terms, you know, and I understand, you know, why there would be an interpretation of Noah as a prophet, just in the same ways that you understand that in the Catholic religion, some people become saints, you know. But it's, you know, it's the human journey that I had to focus on. I mean, that's really all you can focus on.
It begins.
Noah has a PG-13 rating, and frankly, no one under that age should see it. It is at times an unsettling tale, particularly due to the dilemma faced by Noah on the ark itself. He is convinced that God means to end humanity with the flood, and so there should be no more people after the passing of his clan. That idea is dramatically upset while on board the ark. Now, I shan't say any more for those of you who will see it, but biblical literalists will likely be disturbed by that storyline. Still, for those of you looking for an intriguing window onto a staid tale, you may be surprised and startled. Some of the special effects are extraordinary. The fantastical Lord of the Rings inflected scenes seemed arbitrary to me, as was some of the violence. But this is a big Hollywood epic. It is certainly not a Sunday school class. And beyond the environmental chatter and Abrahamic allusions, there are some fine acting performances. Connelly and Crowe are especially accomplished here. So let the debate begin. Noah sets sail this weekend, and if you see it, let us know what you thought. Go to my Facebook page, or you can tweet me at Raymond Arroyo. When we return, the third time is the charm for the chart-topping Benedictines of Mary. Their producer, Monica FITZGIBBONS of de Montfort Music, joins us to unveil what makes these singing cloistered nuns so successful. When the World Over Live continues, stay right there.
Lent is a time for us to meditate deeply on the tremendous love of God for man.
Of course, music is an integral part of our life. We're in the chapel 8 times a day singing to God. And it is just something that comes naturally to our hearts.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My next guest is the producer of yet another #1 CD on Billboard's current classical traditional chart. And this week marks its 6th week in that position. Once again, it is a CD of a cappella chant by a religious order of nuns in rural Missouri. Lent at Ephesus is the name of the CD, and its predecessors have outsold artists like Taylor Swift and One Direction, and they are the only order of nuns ever to have won Billboard's coveted Classical Traditional Artists of the Year award 2 years running. Just what is the cultural message here? Returning to give us an update on the sisters' phenomenal success is Monica FITZGIBBONS, co-founder of de Montfort Music. Monica, thanks for returning.
Thanks for having me on again.
Tell me what makes Lent at Ephesus different from the earlier releases.
Well, obviously we're dealing with the season of Lent.
Oh, that's a good one.
So we'll start there.
Okay.
But also, you know, we have 23 beautiful tracks on this. I mean, that's about as many as you can put.
Cram on, yeah.
Exactly. Also, another distinguishing factor is the fact that we have 3 original compositions by the sisters themselves that just fit right along with the rest of these, you know, O Sacred Head Surrounds, right up against this My Mercy. I mean, it's all from, you know, these beautiful brides of Christ.
These nuns have had such an amazing success, the Benedictine Sisters of Mary. How has it altered their lives? I mean, they're in this rural Missouri cloister. Are they out doing tours? Are they giving concerts? How has it changed their life?
Much to my chagrin, no.
You'd like to take them on tour, but no doing.
I really wouldn't, but part of me does.
Yeah.
No, they are monastic, Raymond. They're fully committed. This has not changed a thing. The only thing it may have changed is that it has helped them pay off some of their debt, and they, you know, really do want to complete their building project. Yeah. So it's been beautiful to know that all these people who have supported this music are supporting them in this way.
Are you surprised by the reception, not only the public reception, but the way the artistic community has really embraced this project?
And they really have. And in a way, no, because really from the very early days, we recognize that, you know, we're dealing with a Mother Superior who's quite accomplished.
Yeah. Tell me about her, Mother Cecilia.
Yes, well, you know, she graduated from the Shepherd School of Music at Rice, and from there went on to this accomplished French horn career. And, you know, even the Shepherd School is saying we've never had a #1 album on the classical charts at all on Billboard. So, I mean, it has really had a huge ripple effect, and people are taking notice, and really, what can anybody say? It's beautiful.
I want to give people a little preview, a little taste of this, and this is rare footage. This comes from a PBS documentary. Now, it is shown in select markets, but it's going to get a big national rollout in June of this year.
And then again next year during Lent.
Wow,
they couldn't wait till Lent next year.
They couldn't wait? Okay, we are going to share this with people. This is Christus Factus Est, and these are the Benedictine Sisters of Mary. Take a listen.
Christus Factus Est pro
So beautiful. That is Lent at Ephesus, a little excerpt, and the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of Apostles, you're hearing there sing so beautifully. What has been the reaction of those in the public space. I know you get emails and calls all the time, and the sisters do as well. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I think the reaction has been, you know, people have had more quiet in their life and have enjoyed a piece of their contemplative life. But also, you know, you have people who are birthing babies to this music, who are dying to this music. I mean, they've played me voicemails from people in nursing homes who are saying, you know, I don't have anyone here, but somehow I got this CD and it's keeping me company and it's bringing me closer to God.
Do you think everybody realizes this is really sung prayer? This is adoration of God. These women have given their lives to Him, and that's what this is really an expression of. That's sort of the subtext, if you will.
Yeah, well, I think people are all in different areas of their journey, so whether they acknowledge that they realize it or it's just heart speaking to heart, you know, we don't know, but we know that they're enjoying it.
Whose idea was this Lent at Ephesus, this most recent incarnation? Yours or the sisters?
I think they got a lot of feedback after Advent at Ephesus and said, you know, we'd like a seasonal for Lent, and they just responded to the people.
It's been unbelievable. Now, you worked for David Geffen for a time.
Yeah.
How did he shape your career? What did he teach you?
Well, you know, you have someone like David Geffen, and, you know, it was SKG, so you had Spielberg, Katzenberg, Geffen.
And a huge recording mogul.
Yeah.
Dreamgirls and Little Shop of Horrors and all manner of Whitney, everybody in their door.
Yeah. He worked with some of the biggest ones. And, you know, the thing is that everything he did was 100%, 110. And he was a perfectionist, and, you know, whatever, you know, Thomas Aquinas says the who, what, when, where, how, but what he was doing was always bringing his best to it. And so when you then go to the Benedictines of Mary, even though it's a completely different thing, you know, they're doing the same thing, and I think that's what we were attracted to, is just that they don't skimp on any detail.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. The arrangements. And Mother Cecilia does a lot of these herself.
Oh, she does, yes. I mean, and she'll do them sometimes in a recording situation where the producer will say, you know, what about this verse? And we'll think, okay, well, that's the end of that take. And she'll say, no, I'll be right back. She's got her pencil and she'll rearrange.
Making adjustments.
Go back in and we'll be, you know, shooting the breeze, and all of a sudden we hear the sisters just singing it. And then, you know, all of a sudden that's the lead track on the album.
Oh, boy.
They're really talented.
Amazing. No, well, you can hear it. Monica FITZGIBBONS, thank you so much for all you do and for coming in.
Thank you.
Lent at Ephesus by the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of Apostles, is available at the EWTN Religious Catalog, music outlets everywhere, and you can download it on iTunes. For the latest, visit demontfortmusic.com. Also, be on the lookout for that wonderful documentary on the Benedictines that airs beginning June 1st on PBS. Well, that's all the time we have for now. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. I know I'm needy. The links are on my website, and I bring you the latest news and commentary throughout the week, and we post the entire show there. And if you sign up for my free e-blast, I'll send you all kinds of exclusives. Go to the center of the web page at RaymondArroyo.com. Also, my new children's book, Kerman Durman and the Relic of Perilous Falls, premieres this September. If you'd like me to speak at a bookstore or a school or your library or even your parish, write me at Raymond@RaymondArroyo.com. Put Kerman in the subject line and include the contact info for the librarian, principal, or manager, and we will reach out to them. Next week, Pastor Rick Warren in an exclusive interview, and George Weigel joins us right here. In the meantime, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. We'll see you next time. Bye.